Okay, welcome to a live stream tonight that we're going to pull the curtain back a little bit in this stream and talk about all of the little elements of my setup and what it takes to actually do a live stream in Logic Pro and have a camera like this with me on the screen. And lately I've been using multiple cameras and also taking things from like my mobile devices for this. And so I figured that perhaps there's some people out there who are thinking, dang, I wish I could do a live stream and I wish that I had the understanding of all the pieces of tech that go into it. And so that's what this stream is. Hopefully, we'll get some people on here who are interested in what it means and want to ask questions about it. However, we will be also taking just general questions about logic if that's the road we want to go down. So we'll either go a short stream tonight, just depending on how many people show up, or we could go a little bit longer if we get some people on here. But I'm assuming more that there'll be some people who search this up later or who look up the idea of live streaming in an audio workstation and what that means. We'll talk about the easy parts of this. We'll talk about the harder parts. And we'll talk about the parts which I still haven't fully solved using the tools that I use. And so that's our plan. I mean, that's what we're going to do. First and foremost, I use a piece of software called OBS, which is an open source project you can freely get on the internet, download it, install it, and use it for live streaming. And so that's the main tool that I'm using through this whole process. And so we'll talk about some of the basic settings of that. That'll be a little different for anybody who's doing this. But there were a couple parts that I had to kind of wrap my brain around, and that even now still cause a little bit more latency than I would like. And so I'm wishing for some new features of OBS that hopefully over time will get installed and work. But that's okay, that's what we're looking at. So that's our goal, and let's just dive right into this. So first and foremost, doing the screen capture is really, I think, the easiest part. Just having the screen be streamed live, I think, is relatively simple. There are more solutions than just OBS, which can be used for that. But like I said, I'm using OBS. And let me pull OBS over onto the actual streaming screen. Right there. So now you're going to see a little bit of a duplication here. And that's fine. But I've got a few different of these things called scenes. And each of these scenes, I've got different sources in them. So I can actually switch between these. I don't actually know what's in the other scenes right this moment. I think the full screen me is just sitting with this background, which is actually the room that I'm sitting in, but that's not currently what it looks like or anything. And so I'm being, like my background is being removed out, and that's just an image sitting behind. I think the help panel, sometimes if I want to use the help panel, that's just a small version of me up in the corner here. And so there's that. So let's go back to the big full one. Looks like this. And then I have a couple other ones. I have a hold music one. I'll switch to that for a second. That's if I ever need to like step away for a second. I can actually just put that screen on for a moment. So I've gone through and I have actually probably extra things in here that I'm not even using. But I keep a lot of them on here. I've got my laugh track. And by the way, all of these sources, not all of them, many of these sources are connected onto my Stream Deck interface, which I think is probably too hard to pull over. Well, no, it's on the long leash right now. It's this thing right here. So a lot of these sources are hooked up to this. There's an app that comes with it and allows me to switch between them. So I get to just touch one of the buttons and it does things like the laugh track or the clapping. I mean, clapping's cool always. That's primarily for when I tell Reaper jokes, because Reaper jokes are what people come to my channel for. Yeah, I get it. But so all of those are tied through there. But there's a few things on here. So I think most of that, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but there's a couple elements of that which are a little bit less obvious. And so those are the ones I want to talk about. So first of all, OBS can use the audio interface that I've got connected to my system. In this case, my SSL12, which is a great interface. And that's you can see like the little meters going here. That's that interface. That's me talking on it. And I've got to get the levels set. I've had some issues when I switched to this new device being a little bit softer. And I've remedied. It looks like I'm maybe going a little bit into the red and clipping every once in a while. So I'll have to fine tune that a little bit. But I do use, with these three little dots, there's some filters. I do have a gain and a limiter on that particular input. So it shouldn't ever really be clipping too much. The limiter hopefully will be like, keeping that from distorting, although I can't actually hear. So this is the overall scope of this is a one person stream, right? So I'm setting it up, I'm running it while I'm doing it. I've got to quality control it as the stream happens, and try to make sure that there's no issues with the audio or other stuff. And it's not always easy to do all of that simultaneously. In fact, that part probably takes the most planning, and then the most thinking quickly on your feet if there's an issue or something along those lines. TKU says hi and thanks for your long-term work. I'm always consulting your videos. I'm a Logic user since version 9. My workflow has become better thanks to you. You're welcome, and thanks for being on the stream. And just for anyone who is, I know we have a few people watching live right this moment. If you have other questions, we can always take little detours. As always, the streams are here. We do the streams not so that I can just gab at all of you, but so that you can interact and stuff. So thanks for watching. Okay. Setting that is easy. Getting the microphone in. The one problem is you can't use like more than the first two inputs on any interface, at least as far as I've seen with OBS and what I've read online. They haven't added that as far as I know. Hopefully at some point they will, because there's a lot of things that would greatly benefit from additional audio channel inputs. One of them would be with my interface, the SSL12. It has a loopback function so that I could send whatever I wanted out some channels of my interface, and it would automatically come in as the input to OBS. Right now you can't do that. You can just do channels 1 and 2. So I have to be creative with how I do this. And the main way that I've come up with for getting audio, so audio out of Logic, that's what I'm thinking right now, because if I want to be able to have people hear what I'm doing in Logic, then I have to come through and do that a slightly different way. With audio, I'm doing this down mic auxiliary audio 2, and it's the Zoom audio device. Now the Zoom audio device is what the Zoom, the whole chat engine, not the chat engine, but the video conferencing tool. That one has this internal driver that connects various things, and I just hijacked it. So I use Zoom sometimes, but when I'm not using Zoom, I use Zoom audio device for OBS. And so this allows me to route signal from Logic into OBS. And if I come down to my audio MIDI setup, you'll see I've created a new what's called multi-output device. I'm going to zoom up here. And I'll explain how I do the zoom up thing in just a moment too. But I do a new multi-output device. And in that device, I've got my main output, which is what I listen to with my headphones, and I also have it go to the Zoom audio device. So that's essentially means that the audio feed from Logic is simultaneously sent out both of those places. And I could do it to all of them. I could actually send it to any choice here. and we'd hear them all simultaneously. But in this case, I want to be able to hear it myself, so that's the SSL12, and then I also want OBS to hear it, so I use the Zoom audio device. And so that's how I'm getting sound from Logic into OBS. So in Logic, all then I have to do is go to my audio drivers, and my output is set to streaming, that multi-output device I created, and the SSL12. Or that's the input device, but it's going to both of those because I set it to the streaming output. I just named it that. That was not a name it gave it. That's the name I gave it in the audio MIDI utility. The bummer is when you use that multi-output device, it gives the round trip delay or latency 45.9 milliseconds and a 37.3 output milliseconds. So, I mean, that's a huge delay. It makes it harder to perform live. Almost impossible to record vocals, but I've done both on live streams, and it's doable. It's just not what I would call ideal. So that's how I'm getting sound from Logic to the stream, and my voice is just going directly to OBS through the input. And then let's talk about the other part of this, which is me sitting here on the screen. And as I'm on the screen, you can see I'm cut out. You can see my hand. You can see Logic behind it. In some cases, you can actually see a little shadow on the Logic thing. That's just because the green screen is right behind me. And so I'm cutting that out fairly decently. With that, I've gone back and forth. I actually have a really amazing green screen. It's 13 feet long and like 7 or 8 feet tall. It's a beast. It's really cool. And I've got lighting to go all around it. And I've done streams. I have a room that I can do that big screen in it and set up a desk and put everything there. It sounds great. But I found myself tearing it down and putting it back up too often because it's in a multi-use space. And because it's wintertime right now, the heating system in that room is not terrific. I mean, it's great. It's a great furnace in my house, but it's too noisy. And so I have to turn off the heat when I'm doing a stream in the wintertime. And for some reason, other people in the house had some issues with that, right? And so I don't do it that way. I come and I've got this kind of like a Harry Potter closet under the stairs, except it's not exact next to the stairs. But when we moved into this house, there's this closet that's right underneath the front door in the basement area. And it has essentially dirt on 3 sides because it's dug into the side of the ground. And that's all like basic framing. And beyond that, it's like cement. So I have a door behind me, and I've put like weather stripping along the door seams to keep it so that there's as little leakage as possible. And the only thing that you can ever hear in this room, really, people can walk upstairs, they can be talking and doing stuff. The only thing that I ever hear is there is like a drainage from the laundry room, which is 2 floors above me. And so if someone's doing a load of laundry, every once in a while you can hear the water coming down. It's happened on a stream a few times, but I don't know if anyone's ever realized what it was. So it's a great location. It's small. It's just a few feet deep and 4 to it's probably like 5 or 5.5 feet wide. It's not huge, but I use lights in front of me, and I have in this room, because my big green screen, my 2 green screens I use don't fit in here. I have an IKEA bed sheet that was my first green thing ever, and my kids liked the color. And when I realized that I needed a green screen, I stole one of their sheets. And then it's been one ever since. I actually put grommets on the corner so you can suspend it from hooks on the wall. And I'll show you what that looks like. I can show you when I give you the camera feed of my Insta360 Link controller. This 4K webcam is amazing. I love it. I don't know if this will crash the whole system or not. But this is what I look like right now with just the sheet. You can see there's actually some wrinkles and stuff, but it's good enough that the chroma key or the color key inside OBS can remove this. Even with that shadow over there, I don't think we have too much of an issue. I have another light right down here to help remove that a little bit. So we'll close that for a second. And so then I just put myself on here and use, not that, I want to use the filter. And it's the chroma key. So I was right. It's the chroma key that I'm using. And it works really well. So I'm not going to mess with the settings right now, but you can see my default settings here. And it seems to remove, there's every once in a while you can catch a little green edging, but for the most part it's pretty good. And so we don't have to worry too much about that. Okay, so that's the majority of the OBS piece to this. There are a couple other things I've been doing of late. One of them is connecting a mobile device. And so, for instance, right here, this is my mobile device. This is my phone. So if I hold up my phone so you can see it on here, you'll see, if I push play on my phone, it's not doing anything, of course. But I can change what's happening on my phone. You'll see it up there. Weird, it's not playing. But this is a nice little trick that I do with QuickTime. So here's QuickTime. Let me find this on the other page here. So this is a movie recording. In QuickTime, if you have your mobile device connected, you can set it as a screen right here. And so I've got this selected, and then it shows up in the QuickTime window. So the QuickTime window, then I just move off the screen to my second monitor and put it down in the corner. And for this source in OBS, you do window capture, and then I choose QuickTime movie recording as the source. And so then I have this on, I can move it wherever I want to on my screen, and it keeps it, the iPad or iPhone up on the screen, so then you can share that in the live stream. And then of course I can always turn that off if I want to, just by having that hidden. And I can put that on the Stream Deck if I want to, and make that a button, and just push a button for it to come back and forth. I haven't actually set one for that, but let's do that real quick. I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to configure my Stream Deck here. You see I've got some empty buttons here. So let's go to OBS, Source Visibility. I'm going to drag that over right to here. And I'm going to say, let's do iPhone. And then I go to whichever scene that I want. In this case, the full camera sitting. And then I go to Source, and I do the Mac OS screen capture. I could change the name in OBS. I just have the default because I only have one of them. I don't need to really remember. And then I close that, and then I can come over to my Stream Deck and just push this button, and it will go back and forth. You'll also see an audio input comes from that. So super cool that you can do that as well. You can hear what's on there if there's some sort of audio feed, which in this case, the QuickTime, I think you can set some stuff, but I haven't tested that out with an iPhone. Okay, so Stream Deck is super powerful and flexible, and you can do custom GIF icons, and you can do all kinds of fun stuff with that. So pretty sweet. Now, you can do multiple cameras in here. And in fact, I have a second camera, one that I often put on my keyboard. And right now I put it in the middle of the screen, and it's actually aimed over at me. So I'll turn this on for a second. So you can see, hey, And not as nice as the first one, but it does give you a sense of where I have some lights in the front of the room here. So I've got these two like skinny panel lights that go around the monitor, and that's what helps keep me lit. You can actually see I've got some shadows from this microphone, the arm right there that kind of go on my face, but I actually don't mind a little bit. It actually, normally I'd want a little bit of variance of light on my face anyway, and so while it's not perfect, it's certainly it's not too distracting. I don't think most of the time. Most people probably watch that and don't even think of anything when they're seeing it. Okay, so that's the lighting. That's the audio setup. We talked about the Stream Deck and using the Zoom audio devices. One of the last things I'll show you here. Let me move OBS back over to the other side here. Get that out of the way. Okay, cool. I will say, if you're doing this all by yourself, having two monitors is almost, it's probably critical. It's almost impossible to do without it. And so I would say if you want to do streaming, you make sure you have the two monitor setup. So I've got all of my helpful stuff over on that screen, including reading comments and stuff. So if you're watching me stream often, I'll look over just like this much. And that's where I'm reading comments. And then I've got the main screen in front of me, which is where I put Logic, and that's what everybody else sees. The other thing I do sometimes is the control option, which is turning on this little zoom section. And I love this. I think it's so useful if I'm talking about something to be able to zoom in a little bit. I should probably make that bigger, but I mean, I can adjust it however I want. Let me show you where we do that. That's in the system settings. And I don't know if I can make this bigger or not. And I don't think I can make it wider, but you can make it longer. And with this, we have under accessibility, zoom. So I'm using the accessibility features of OS 10 to do that zoom. And I found that has worked super nice. And so you can see there's the keyboard shortcuts to zoom. And I'm not using either of those ones. I'm trying to see. Oh, it's the picture in picture. So the zoom style, it's right here, the right there. And so I don't know if I have to go to advanced or not. I can't. I've set this up so long ago. Right there. I think that's it. The control option to temporarily toggle zoom. And then I can hold control command to temporarily detach the zoom from the pointer. I don't know if okay, I don't use that feature. But that's the main one I use, the temporary toggle zoom for that. And that's really helpful because if I'm going someplace small here, it's like I'm on, an EQ tool or whatever. Ooh, it's acting like I've never opened it, but it's part of my project. So then I can just zoom in a little bit and make changes, and the viewers can see those a lot better. So that's a thing I use that's part of OS 10 that has nothing to do with OBS or anything else. I think I can use Command Option while I'm doing this to make this even more zoomed in or out. So it's like, I actually might want to make it just a little bit more zoomed. Because then you can actually like read the numbers of settings and things. Cool. So that's a part of it as well. Thinking about how people can see what you're doing. I mean, Logic has a lot going on. I mean, there's a lot of windows, there's a lot of menus, there's a lot of little buttons. There's buttons that just have like little icons and don't have any explanation of what you're doing. And so trying to find a way to help people understand what you're talking about when you're doing it, I think is really important. That's one of the reasons why right now I've got a red mouse. My icon is red. But I think at various times I remember, I don't always remember, but at various times I've put the mouse bigger. Let's see, mouse. Let's see what's under there. Tracking, scrolling. Do. Let's see. Why is it not flip in between them? Okay, so pointer size under accessibility. So you can actually just make this a lot bigger. I have at various times used it. It's actually a lot harder to use from my point of view because then it's not exactly at the tip. And so I try to remember to make that smaller again. And then sometimes I forget and then I make it smaller and then I forget to make it larger before a stream. But you can see that it's a lot nicer to have it bigger um, when I'm streaming because then you can all see like where the mouse is all the time. And I think that can make a big difference for certain people just to have that little bit of a size change. Okay, trying to think if there's other stuff. I think the last thing I'll talk about is just kind of the thought process going into doing a stream, which is what you're going to talk about and what you're going to hopefully bring to people who are watching it. And that I think may be one of the harder parts, being able to think on the fly if you don't have it totally like planned out every little detail. But for me, one of the best parts is being a little bit more spontaneous and not having like a super deep script every single time I do this. I've done it where I've written music live. I've done a few of those, and certain people I think really enjoy that, but they have less views overall. And then sometimes I'll put up a video about rumors or speculation on new versions of Logic or talking about new releases of Logic, and those videos do really well. And they take a little time to prepare. I can't just like start the stream button and go. I have to actually, think about what I'm going to talk about, have a couple main points, and then go off the cuff for the rest of it. Now, not everybody can go off the cuff, but in my case, I think one of the strengths I have in that area would be that I've been a teacher now. I think my first time teaching a classroom, like an official classroom, let me think way back for this one for a second. That would be in 2004, I think. So we're looking at almost 20 years at this point since the first time I started teaching. And before that, I was like a studio, kind of like a TA in a recording studio on campus and worked with students like day in and day out. And so after a certain number of hours of just talking and, creating lesson plans and going off of the lesson plan and then realizing that like after like 5 years of teaching similar concepts that you no longer needed an exact lesson plan. You just needed like those pillars, the framework to make sure you're talking about the right stuff. After doing that for, 10 years, 15 years, now 20 years, there's a certain amount of like sitting in front of a station and talking to people that just feels like it's natural. And so the biggest thing is if you want to do this, if you want to be someone who can live stream, you got to practice talking. And it's weird. The weirdest part that's different than teaching is not having people right in front of you to respond to you. Now, the chat for me is where I get most of the responses. And that's one of the reasons why I've migrated more to doing more live streams instead of just canned videos, because I think that interactivity, the ability to have people really there listening and then making comments, and then I can ask them questions and they can ask questions, and that back and forth is what I want the most. So I wasn't doing much live streaming before this, thing that happened the last couple of years with COVID. Um, I wasn't doing a ton, but when that hit and all of my classes moved online into Zoom, it was really unnerving to have a bunch of students just sitting there. We couldn't force them to put their cameras on. I could just encourage them to, and so I'd have whole classes with nobody with their camera on. And at the very beginning, they weren't talking, they weren't chatting in the chat box, and I had to realize that that stuff comes with training, meaning I had to help them understand how to do it because nobody knew how to do it. And so that paradigm shifted for me. And now my classes that I teach online, I still teach some hybrid courses because I really like the format for certain things. Not for everything, but for certain things it works really well. And so I spend the first 2 or 3 weeks of the semester training students on how to interact appropriately on Zoom. Meaning, I say, the next few minutes, everyone put something in the chat about this. And I encourage chatting. And I say, if people are in there talking and they go off on a little tangent, I make sure to point that out and say, that's amazing. You are all doing this exactly right. And it encourages that positive reinforcement, encourages students to do more of it. And there's sometimes whole side conversations happening in addition to the lecture. And it's this cacophony of learning happening that I just love. I love seeing that action happening. On top of that, I say, this is a time in the class when I'm going to be teaching you a new concept. Anyone who wants 5 extra credit points, turn on your camera so I can see comprehension. I don't say just turn them on. I explain this is something that's important for me to understand. So it's I'm training them. And then everyone after a little while gets into a groove and it works really well. You don't just leave that to chance. You don't just leave anything to chance. And so that's the same with doing any sort of live stream. You don't leave it to chance, or you just know that there's a chance that it's going to be a throwaway stream. Every once in a while that happens. Can't tell you how many times I've been on this image at the beginning of a stream, and I start going into logic. I don't see that in front of me. I see logic in front of me. And so I start talking about topics, and then someone in the chat says, hey, you're not on logic. Can you show us the logic screen? And I say, oh, dang it. Let's go back. And so I flip it back over to this view right here, and then we continue on. But I don't publish those streams because for me, that's my bar. That's my standard. If I do a huge screw up with what people are seeing, and then someone's watching it later, they're going to experience it like the first time where I screwed it up and didn't even realize, and it's going to be frustrating to them. And so that's one of my standards. That's I don't put that stuff up later for people to watch. At that point, it's a throwaway stream, and either I'll make a video about the topic that's canned and post it later, or perhaps I'll do another stream and incorporate that information into that. But I have certain standards. So if you're watching this later, know that this video made it up and we didn't have any major glitches, which so far we haven't, which I always appreciate from the technology gods, because it can be really dicey sometimes doing this. If you're new to streaming and new to content creation in general, there's just this window of practice you have to do. You have to make all of the mistakes. You don't have to make them in front of people. You don't even have to post any of that stuff. You can practice without actually ever publishing, or you can, do some of that stuff like that. Streaming, you can start really early in your YouTube channel. The desktop streaming you can do sooner than you can even do mobile streaming. Mobile streaming, you have to have 50 subscribers first. And that's to prevent you from creating a new account and then streaming something that you oughtn't be streaming. Like something that's criminal or something that's controversial. And so they put limits on that to make sure that you don't just start an account, start streaming, and blast out the address and have no accountability. But computer streaming, they let you do sooner than that. So you can actually do most of this, I think, right from the get go with OBS. And so you don't have to wait, but you also don't have to make it public. You can do an unlisted stream, do the whole stream, look back at it, make notes, listen for audio quality, listen for the software, what it sounds like, and then improve it and do another one and then do another one. And just like really get good at talking to nobody, because that's what you're essentially doing at those points. If you're doing an unlisted stream, you're not going to have anybody watching. And in fact, if you don't have any subscribers or an avenue to broadcast that you're doing this, you won't have any audience members, even if you make it public. The very first time I streamed, I had nobody watching. It was an empty stream. It was years ago. And then I thought, you know what? I don't like how that feels. I don't like talking to nobody. But now, usually, these late night streams, this is not what I would call like a super sexy stream, or perhaps even interesting to people who are awake and on YouTube right this moment. But certainly, I'm hoping that there'll be some people who find some use for this in the long run. And so, I'm putting it out there. In the next couple days, I'll be doing a stream about, something that's totally like interesting to everybody. And that'll get a lot more views real time. I'll probably do it during the middle of the day, which is a good time for both those in the United States and those viewers of mine who are in Europe. And so, we pick some of those times very carefully for that, but it's what it is. So you can practice, you can do dry runs, and then you can do the real thing. And that's where you figure out exactly what's going to work and what doesn't. And the real trick, maybe the hardest thing to do at the beginning, but one of the most important things to do, is if you make a mistake or if something happens, just be like cool under pressure. Be like, that's awesome. That sucks. Let's fix that real quick and just keep on going. Don't get frustrated. Don't stop the stream. Don't, act like nothing happened either. Just be like, cool. Let's just keep on moving on. Because at some point, I think people appreciate just that approach to this. You just pretend like you're having a conversation with friends and don't let things ruffle your feathers. And that'll be exactly what I think brings people back in many ways. The ability just to be conversational, to be yourself, to be authentic, to make jokes about Reaper, because Reaper is pretty awesome. And I think that we all need to have a good Reaper joke in our lives. I think that's critical to doing this, is being yourself, though. I take myself way too seriously. I'm a very mostly serious person with kind of a dad joke type sense of humor. It's a little dark in some points. And I'm not afraid of screwing up and making fun of myself, or I'm not afraid of making fun of other people. Usually in good fun. I really hate hurting other people's feelings, so I try not to do that. But it's like I've thought about a series idea forever, where I just read some of the comments on some of the Facebook groups about Logic, and we just roast some of those people who ask the stupidest questions I've ever heard. It's clear they've never looked at the manual or even tried to find the answer. They literally just go to the web or Facebook without any effort on their part whatsoever. I mean, I can't do it though, because it feels just like a little bit too mean-spirited. And so I haven't ever started that series. It could come at some point. We could do that. We could just once a week do a news segment. What plugins have gotten updated? What new features are out there? What new things are on the App Store? And then we do 15 minutes of just roasting noobs off of Facebook. Why are you on Facebook asking questions? Really? I mean, yes. Why why are we still using Facebook for Logic Pro help? Whew. I have a group on there. It has like 500 members. I've never gotten anyone to really do anything on that group. I post things, and every once in a while, people post questions. But it's a group that's like barely breathing. Boom, boom, boom. The heartbeat is slow, and that's because most of the people that I interact with on here aren't interested in being on Facebook. So they're always like, let's do a Discord server. And then half the other people are like, what's a Discord server? And they're like, well, why don't you get on Reddit more often? And again, there's a half of the people who are like, I'll never do that. So there's like really no great answer. Um, but at the same time, Facebook, it seems to be one of the places that a lot of people are looking for help. And so who knows? Who knows what the right answer for that is? But it hasn't been a stream that I've been willing to pull the trigger on because it feels just slightly over the line, and I don't want to like embarrass somebody. I mean, I do, and I don't. You know what I mean? The evil Sam version certainly is. It would be into that, but I don't know. I haven't done it yet, so we'll see if we ever do. Well, this stream is reaching its end, and I don't know what that means. Oh no. What does RTFM mean? Oh, thank you. Yes, that's just what I just typed it in my phone. Um, I it rings a bell. The problem is no one's ever used that in conjunction with me because it's like I've memorized the manual at some point. Um, but that does come back to me. It's been a while since I've heard that, and I can't tell you how much love I have for you, Adam, because that that is the truth. It's it's just so frustrating. That people think you can use a piece of software like Logic without understanding how it works. They just want to know like the 6 buttons to push to do what they want to do. And then that's like the extent of the investment of time that they're going to make into this. And so, um, if you're going to invest money in a program like this and invest money in tools and hardware and then spend time being creative, at one point or another, crack that open and read through it. Just do it and see what you might learn about how it works. And you'll be blown away by the depth of a piece of software like this. I'm not just talking about Logic. This is not a Logic issue. This is an everybody issue. This is an Ableton issue, a Pro Tools issue, even, dare I say, a Reaper issue. Because there are lots of Reaper users who like pretend like they know everything, and then we quiz them about some stuff, and they're like, and then we just do that thing. We just kind of shake our head at the Reaper user, and we slow clap because darn them for caring so much. Yeah, and Adam says that's why you make top 20 things to know videos. And I don't actually do too much of that. As I've said in many of my streams and videos, I don't do beginner crap. I try to do the stuff that actually I'm learning and interested in. And I only do some of the more pop videos when like my view counts are down for the month. And I'm like, you know what? Okay, let's do a rumor video about Logic Pro 11. And we'll get people like watching this crap. It's not clickbait, but it's as close as it can be without being it. And then Danny says, I was just listening to music and without knowing I've been listening to you for like the past 6 minutes. Hey, that's awesome. It's like, just put me on with a music backtrack, some nice chill beats in the background, and I'll soothe you right to sleep. If you need help sleeping, this is like the perfect place to be tonight. We're a little slower, a little bit more sedate, but Thanks for the viewership without even realizing. I mean, that's the best kind. It's not the best kind, but you know what I mean. But there are a lot of people who've made videos that are like top 10 things that will change your life with logic ever. And they get like, 70, 100,000 views. And I think, dang, maybe I should just cave and do all of that kind of stuff. And then I decide I can't. It's like, it just would drive me crazy. The fastest way to burnout is making that kind of crap on YouTube. And there are a few people who have stuck with it and made that kind of crap over and over and over, and more power to them. That's amazing. Somebody's got to do it, but there are a lot of people who've started channels on content and just walked away at some point because they're like bored out of their mind. They've made the 5 videos they know how to make, and that was the extent of their knowledge, and so they ran out of topics. I've been doing this now for I can't remember. It's not 10 years at this point with logic content. I've been on YouTube a lot longer than 10 years. I used to do synthesizer videos back in the day, and then I did a bunch of random stuff for a while. But the actual logic content was like 2016 or something. And I've been using and teaching logic at the university for much longer than that, but really found out that if I want to keep making videos, I can only make videos of things that like interest me and are like creative or like some sort of creative thing that like tingles my senses a little bit. Because if I make them about that, then I keep making them. And if I make stuff about stuff that I'm forcing myself to make, then there's no way that I would ever continue doing it. So people say to me, why don't you make this kind of content? I'm like, sounds great. Why don't you make that kind of content? If you're interested in it, then you should do it. Like, read the manual first, but do it. Do it anyway. And so that's why I made this video tonight, is to show just a little bit into what it takes to do a live stream. Obviously, making videos that aren't live stream, it's even easier because you don't have all the pressure of doing this in a situation where you have to have all of the stuff working. Everything has to work, and you have to be able to switch between things, and you have to know where things are so quickly that you can go from one thing to the next while you're talking. I can't tell you how many times I've had to like make changes to things in the middle of a sentence, and I'm just talking away and doing it and making the changes, and no one even knows. And so that part I think is interesting for me. I will say nothing is as exciting as doing a live stream. It keeps you on your toes. And I will say, Palo Alto, you are a god. Thank you for the super chat. Thanks for watching. That's why I do this right here, is connections we make with people and getting to know. Like, I can tell there's like at least 20 rotating hardcore viewers of my content. Now, I've got a lot more people who watch stuff than that, but when I do the live streams, I recognize there's like 20 to 30 people's names who I've gotten to know because they come on and they comment and we talk back and forth. I don't get to see a list of people who are on the live stream. There's no mechanism for me to see everybody who's connected. I know YouTube can tell, but I can't tell. And so when people comment, that's when I see their names and get to know them. And people, it's like there's a couple of streams I'm going to be doing coming up. One of them is from this guy in Europe who always talks about this insane template he has. And I asked him to send me a copy of it. I've got the template now. I'm just waiting for the right stream where I'm going to like talk about that template and templates in general and why we use them. But his is like insanity. It's crazy. It's amazing. And so we're going to be talking about it, but I don't just like, again, throw up a live stream on the cuff. I almost always do some prep time and things on it. And so that's kind of in the works, but it's like, that's the thing. He's always on the streams when he's available to come on them, and he makes comments and he was talking about his template one day, and I was like, hey, send me this. Send me your template. I want to feature it. I'm sure he's been like, where the crap is the feature video? But, I don't, nobody rushes me into doing anything. I'm way past that. I don't give into peer pressure. But at the same time, I don't want to just do a crappy job with that one. He's a huge fan, and I'm a huge fan of what he does. And so it's like, we're going to do that one right. I mean, that's just the short about it. So, super cool. So we have a few of you on here. Any questions before we pull the plug on this? We've been going about 50 minutes, and I don't want to go more than like 55 minutes. It's not that late. It's almost 10 p.m. It's been a long day. My kids are out of school for the next 2 days, and they were today as well. So, anybody in the room from Minneapolis, Minnesota? I need to do a stream about that project. I have a project in Minneapolis this weekend. Adam, are you really from Minneapolis? Oh my gosh. That's crazy that I've got like 5 people in the room and you're from Minneapolis. So I'm going to be there this weekend. If you know people who want to do like a Logic meetup, let me know. I'm coming to do some acoustic measurements at the two of the Methodist churches downtown. So I'm coming in. I'm going to be popping some balloons and doing impulse responses in 2 of those churches. Hopefully the snowstorm is. I know I saw that 18 inches is coming. It's going to be insane. But hopefully I'm flying in like late Friday night. I hope by then everything's cleared off a little bit. And then I'll be doing the impulses on Saturday and Sunday, and checking out Monday. So if you are part of any sort of group down there who are doing Logic things, email me. What's the best way to do tap tempo with keyboard and Logic? That's a really good question. Depends on what you want to do. So there's my new favorite way of doing tap tempo. Let's just do a new project. I'm not going to. Software instrument. You can do a tap tempo when you first create your project, but that just gives you one tempo and not across the range. My favorite way right now is to use either the free tempo recording, and let me add just like an instrument here. We'll do the retro synth. So, free tempo recording. Right, so I just played something totally free. Let's push the free tempo recording. Right, just random stuff. And then it says apply region tempo to project, apply average region tempo. I'm just going to do the top one for this. And then I'm going to open up so you can see this. There's the tempo. So that was just like doing a tap tempo in many ways, because it let me just play the tempo in, and then anything else I add to this is going to follow that tempo. So here's a drummer track. Obviously, this stylistically might not match. Let me just do a simple soft. So it just did the whole thing right there. So now when I'm doing some sort of tempo thing, I'll just play in the part instead of doing a tap. But you could do a tap as well, meaning it's like we just go here. Let's do this. Let's do cancel. Let's do the top one. I don't want to do solo. Let's see. So let me do. I just slowed it down as I went. You can see that there's where I really started slowing it down. It actually did it like twice as fast as it probably should be. And it messed up at the end, but that's okay. The other way that I do it is by adding in the capture recording. This is the way that at the very beginning where you just play something free. And then you can just hit the capture recording and it'll do that. Unless you put this into adapt project tempo. And then if you're in the adapt mode and push the capture, then it actually does a tempo map of that as well. So those ways. Now, what you're talking about, Shift Q, if we go to our key commands, tempo, the tap tempo, yeah, that's in the smart tempo editor. So you can do a tap tempo. And this one, it's so complicated. It's not as accurate, I don't think, as the newer tools, because I think that there are some other steps you have to do with it in terms of the project settings. It's been a minute since I've even had to think about this. Synchronization, I think, where you do the sync mode, or we do auto enable external sync and tap tempo. Oof, yeah, I'm not going to mess with that right now. I've made a video about this at one time, a long time ago. But you have to like set the sync mode or the auto enable external sync and tap tempo option. And then if you hit the key, you can do it. But I've never gotten it to work super reliably. And so now I was so happy when they did the free record and the ability to adapt tempo using the capture recording options, because then you could get the exact tempo you want. And I think, let's drag this down to here. Because it was recorded with that tempo, it'll go to this tempo over here. And so it has that tempo information put in with it. And so now you can really mangle things up with whatever tempo they're at. This crazy tempo map here is different than this one, but that file plays perfectly with that one. So it's a good habit. Whatever you have is, whatever way works for you is the best way. The first way, let's do the free recording again. right? So then we say the average region tempo to project. Da, da, da. You'll see it just does it for the whole thing. There's no curves. I played it relatively and not perfectly, relatively in time, and so it's close enough. But I think that the other option tends to be better. This one just gives you that overall average. Okay, we went past 55 minutes, which is what I was thinking. Um, Adam, enjoy the 18 inches of snow. And I'll be there at the tail end of it. So I'll be getting in Friday night, enjoying some acoustic measurements in the churches, and hopefully not as much snow. But thanks everybody for a good live stream, and I'll talk to you all later.